Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now for £250 this Xenta PC doesn't include an operating system, but it is possibly one of the cheapest Ryzen systems on the market. It doesn't look like much, but it and other Xenta computers are intended to be practical, affordable and reliable as per the description on ebuy.com, where these seem to be sold primarily. You won't find much at this price point either in Britain or abroad, which is why I couldn't resist the temptation to buy one and see exactly what we'd get. Now there's nothing to write home about with regards to the case as per usual with these budget PCs, so before we remove the side panel, let's see what we get in terms of included accessories. It's not as common as you might think to get a power cable included, so it's always nice when we do. We've also got a spare SATA cable in here, motherboard documentation and attachable antennas for the wireless adapter. Onto the computer itself then, and I know what you're thinking, do we get dual channel memory? Now this is advertised as having 8 gigs of 3200 MHz DDR4, which is certainly faster than some other systems at this price point, so that's commendable, but I've learnt to manage my expectations in order to avoid disappointment, and our Xenta Micro Tower, I do hope I'm pronouncing that right by the way, would have certainly disappointed me had I expected two 4 gig sticks. In truth, that was a bit of a fabricated drama, as one 8 gig stick is stated in the description, but I still thought we might get lucky with dual channel RAM, because sometimes we do get dual channel RAM unexpectedly in pre-built systems. We'll have to see how this hinders performance later, but do remember that this machine isn't advertised as a gaming computer, and for the everyday tasks that it's intended for, it should do relatively well. Other specs include an MSI A520M Pro motherboard, a basic but reliable choice, a 240GB SSD, and a Ryzen 3 4300GE processor. I might have suggested that the iCano power supply be renamed iCannot if I had heard anything bad about it, but I haven't actually heard anything good or bad about this brand, and to be honest, with the CPU rated at just 35 watts and no discrete graphics card inside here, I don't think there's too much to be concerned with. The 3-year warranty with this system should help ease your mind a little though as well. I sound like I'm being sponsored here, but honestly I'm not. I just found this PC for cheap and wanted to see what was inside. With the only fan in here being attached to the CPU heatsink, this system is very quiet, even under load, and we've even got a touch of RGB, well, B. Since filming the opening shots, I've installed Windows 10 and I've been using this system for a couple of days. So far it has certainly proved snappy for everyday usage. I would like to point out though that the memory speed was actually set incorrectly in the BIOS, and I had to change it manually to 3200 MHz, which is something that you'd probably want to do as well to get the best performance out of it. Nonetheless, its out of the box performance still impressed me for the price, thanks to the 4 cores and 8 threads of the 4300GE, the E indicating that this is a low power CPU. But don't let that put you off. Just like the legendary Ryzen 3300X, the 4300GE offers similar computing power to Intel's legendary i7-7700K, so those of you wanting to scroll through Facebook or watch YouTube in 4K shouldn't worry. The only thing that's actually preventing 4K playback is the Wi-Fi adapter, which I found to be quite poor, but I live in an old house with super thick walls that have often foiled any attempt by my BT Home Hub to project signal further than 10 feet. Still, I'd recommend using a wired connection, which you'd probably do if you had this PC as your primary home or office setup anyway, but can it game? With GPU shortages and high prices on limited stock only getting higher, could something like this allow you to play GTA 5 or CSGO with the boys until that dream GPU becomes a reality? Now I'm sure you've heard many times about the disadvantages of single stick or single channel memory, but just because performance is crippled doesn't mean it's terrible. I was surprised to see at least 60 FPS almost all of the time in CSGO with this sole 3200 MHz DDR4 module installed, and more surprisingly yet, GTA 5 also hit at least 30 frames per second at 1080p. Fallout 4 really took its toll in busier and built up areas with hordes of ghouls chewing up a few frames downtown. Frames we can't really afford to lose, to be honest, but most surprisingly, Call of Duty Vanguard at 720p hit close to 40 FPS on occasion, with the average staying well above 30. This meant that it was sort of playable, but you'd probably find yourself getting wiped out a lot by the guy zooming along at 60 FPS and beyond. So far, it's safe to say that if you want a cheap home or business system that's cool and quiet in operation, then this is a good candidate. And if you've got kids that like to play the occasional game with settings and a frame rate that they don't really care too much about, this might also suit you just fine. Improving performance is actually really simple, and it shouldn't cost too much. Adding another 8GB stick of 3200MHz memory in the spare slot will guarantee an instant performance boost, and this is especially true for gaming. Fallout 4 goes from hit and miss performance to a straight shooting 40 FPS plus almost all of the time, with this number only increasing outside of town and away from settlements. It's not uncommon to see double the frame rate in Grand Theft Auto 5 with 16GB of RAM in dual channel, with the average settling around 60. This is at 1080p with settings that make the game look similar to previous generation 360 and PS3 versions, albeit a bit sharper overall thanks to the better resolution and with slightly better anti-aliasing. It also performs better, of course. While Counter-Strike was performing fairly well beforehand, our second stick of DDR4 means that the frame rate won't often dip below 100. This footage was taken from a bot match, but the on-screen performance figures were taken from an online game using the same map, so there's nothing to worry about here. The Call of Duty Vanguard Beta offered 10 to 15 frames more this time around at the same 720p resolution with the lowest in-game settings, but there will be times when the FPS hits 60 and overall it feels a lot more playable than before, even if the single channel RAM did still offer a better than expected performance. Of course, adding 8 more gigs of RAM also means that other AAA releases, ones previously unplayable, can be enjoyed. Well, sort of, with the 4300 GE and nothing but the Radeon integrated graphics. Cyberpunk 2077 is one example. Now, I wouldn't say it's a good example, but it does run with at least 30 frames per second at 60% of 1080p, so it's a bit blurry, but it's sharp enough to actually see what's going on. In reality, Cyberpunk, just like Red Dead Redemption 2 here, is better suited to a native 720p, but a reduction in resolution scale at Full HD will also get the job done in ensuring 30 FPS. Now, ideally, replacing the PSU and slapping in a discrete graphics card would be the best way to enjoy games. The 4300 GE processor is certainly capable of handling a more powerful discrete graphics card. For basic users, or for those looking to upgrade their home office tech, then this is a decent machine straight out of the box, but keep in mind that you will have to supply your own operating system. Some other machines may cost a little bit more and come with Windows 10 installed already, so be sure to compare pricing after you've accounted for any software that you need. With that said, the processor is the real star of the show, and good on Xenta for using it. I really do hope I'm pronouncing that right. It would be nice to see 2 4GB sticks inside these machines though, to bring out the best in this very capable quad-core APU from AMD. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like on it down below. Leave a dislike if you didn't. I'm trying to cover more pre-builts because they are more easily accessible at the moment and they are a little bit cheaper than building your own in some places as well. Let me know if there's any pre-builts that you'd like me to take a look at, of course, in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.